Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
You sent over some really fascinating material all about breathing.
Yeah, something we do constantly.
Right, like every second, but we hardly ever think about it.
Actually.
So, our mission today, yours and mine, is to unpack this. How does this automatic thing, breathing, affect our health, our well-being?
Even how long we live, potentially.
Yeah, potentially longevity. We're going to explore some ancient ideas, some cutting-edge science. Get ready for a few surprises, I think.
Definitely. It's amazing how something so automatic, tens of thousands of breaths a day
Just happens.
just happens completely under the radar. But the sources really show the contrast, right? Between that automatic nature and the profound impact it has.
Totally. And one of the first things in the material that really struck me, the author's first attempt at conscious breathing, it was, pretty underwhelming. Just sitting there focusing on the breath, nothing much, which I think maybe resonates. If you've ever tried meditation or something similar and felt like, am I doing this right? I'm just breathing.
Right. What's the big deal? That initial feeling or lack of feeling, it just shows how deep that unconscious pattern is.
Yeah.
But the material quickly zooms out, shows how, for literally millennia, cultures saw breath as way more than just air.
Okay, yeah. Like the 7 books of the Chinese Tao, way back 400 BCE, talking about breath for healing, but also for harm, which is kind of wild.
It makes you wonder what they were actually doing, what techniques.
Totally. And then you've got Hindu philosophy, breath and spirit being like the same thing.
With really elaborate practices.
Yeah, practices for balance. And the Buddhists using breath for longer life, higher consciousness.
It's clear they saw it as powerful, like real medicine.
What's amazing is how consistent that is, right? Across totally different cultures.
That shared focus on regulating the breath, slowing it down.
Holding it sometimes.
Yeah. These weren't just, abstract ideas. They saw them as practical tools for health, for a longer life.
Makes you think, what did they know? What did they figure out that maybe we've sort of forgotten?
That's the question. And now, fast forward.
To today.
And science is starting to, catch up. The research is backing up some of these ancient ideas.
Like what specifically?
Things like lowering blood pressure, boosting athletic performance, balancing the nervous system, all through consciously breathing.
Right. So it's this journey from just breathing automatically, breath number 3,000 for the day, to maybe breath number 6,000, where you're actually paying attention.
And along the way, you encounter these interesting figures like that mid-century pulmonologist.
Yeah, tell me about him. Using exhale power.
Apparently, yeah. Helping veterans recover, training Olympic athletes, just by focusing on how they breathed out.
Wow. What was the mechanism there? Do we know?
It seems focusing on a full exhale helped really maximize their lung capacity, make breathing more efficient overall. That shift from unconscious to conscious is key.
Okay. And speaking of mechanics, the nose, for the last century, Western medicine has kind of treated it as secondary.
A backup intake valve, yeah.
Breathe through it if you can, but hey, the mouth works too.
That thinking is really challenged by this material.
It really is. It hints at this incredible complexity, these vital functions packed into the thing on your face.
Thinking of it as just a tube is a massive underestimation. We'll see. It does so much more than just let air in.
Okay, so let's zoom way, way out. Back to the beginning. Evolution.
Billions of years ago.
The story of breath is tied to the story of life itself. It starts with these tiny organisms.
Just releasing oxygen. As waste, basically.
Not very glamorous.
But that waste product, oxygen, it changed everything. It set the stage for this huge evolutionary jump.
When was that?
Around 2.5 billion years ago.
Yeah.
Aerobic life emerges.
Yeah.
Life that uses oxygen.
And the advantage was?
Energy. A massive energy boost. 16 times more energy than using carbon dioxide.
16 times? That's huge.
Unbelievable, right? Like you said, horse-drawn carriage to rocket ship.
That energy boost, that must have fueled everything. Bigger life forms, more complex.
Exactly. Led to mammals, eventually. Us.
And as mammals evolved, the breathing system got more specialized.
Right. You get noses developing to warm and filter the air.
Throats to guide it.
Lungs, obviously, for the gas exchange. Extracting oxygen, getting rid of CO2.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for us today. Looking at ancient human skulls.
Work by researchers like Dr. Evans and Dr. Boyd.
They found our ancestors had wider nasal openings, wider apertures.
Yeah, they use these specific skull measurements, the Frankfurt plane and perpendicular.
Right, to connect skull, shape, symmetry.
To how efficiently they might have breathed. And it suggests, yeah, maybe they were much better nasal breathers.
Why does that matter? Wider passages mean?
Likely just easier, more efficient breathing through the nose. Good skull symmetry often points to good overall development, including the airways.
So they probably had an easier time breathing nasally.
Seems likely. But then, evolution throws a curveball.
How so?
The very things that made humans successful, mastering fire, processed food,
Big brains, complex language.
all that stuff seems to have come with a trade-off, a kind of downside for breathing.
Like what?
We started seeing more recessed facial growth, smaller mouths, smaller throats.
More snoring, things like that.
Exactly. It's almost like our success inadvertently made breathing, this basic function, a bit harder for us.
That's a crucial point. Our modern lifestyle, softer foods, mean less chewing.
Right, which could affect how our faces even develop, plus environmental stuff.
It all adds up to narrower airways, maybe more breathing issues.
It really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
The author reflects on this, right? Picturing our ancestors.
Breathing easily, strong jaws, good teeth.
And then you look at us today, maybe a stuffy nose all the time, crooked teeth, feeling like you can't quite get enough air.
It's a stark contrast. Have we lost something fundamental?
That disconnect
Yeah.
between our design and our current reality, it makes you wonder if our environment has hindered this basic process.
Okay, so to really drive home the difference, nasal versus mouth breathing, the author did this experiment.
Oh yeah, the Stanford experiment. Pretty intense.
10 days, nose plugged, forced mouth breathing.
Voluntarily. That's dedication.
Sounds awful. What happened?
The negative effects were immediate, like within 24 hours.
Really?
A 1,300% increase in snoring.
Wow. 1,300%.
Sleep apnea events quadrupled. 4 times as many.
That's dramatic. In just one day.
Dramatic. And subjectively. Dry mouth, sore throat, just feeling lousy.
Doesn't sound like restful sleep at all, which I know is a big focus for many listeners.
It really highlights how much the body prefers nasal breathing. The mouth just isn't built for that constant flow of dry, unfiltered air.
And it wasn't just physical discomfort, right? There was a social reaction too.
Yeah, telling a friend, Antonio, who was usually supportive,
Mm-hmm.
he was apparently kind of horrified, disbelieving. His attitude changed.
Huh. So there's even a stigma around mouth breathing, even for science.
It touches on something, maybe. We often associate mouth breathing with being unwell, or maybe less alert, subconsciously.
Interesting. Okay, so enough about the downsides of mouth breathing. Let's champion the nose.
The unsung hero.
We hear from this trainer, Douillard. He suggests just switching to nasal breathing during exercise can make a huge difference.
Right. Less exertion, better endurance.
His athletes felt more energized, apparently. Gave up mouth breathing during workouts completely. That's powerful.
It lines up with the physiology. The nose filters, warms, humidifies the air.
Makes it easier for the lungs.
Much easier. Plus, the nose does something else crucial. Nitric oxide production. We'll get to that.
Okay, but first, to understand the athletic side better, aerobic versus anaerobic respiration. Quick refresher.
Sure. Aerobic is energy with oxygen. Efficient, sustainable. Think jogging.
And anaerobic.
That's energy without oxygen. Quick bursts, like sprinting. Less efficient, produces lactic acid.
That muscle burn.
Exactly. It's a backup system. The body prefers aerobic for anything sustained.
Which brings us to Phil Maffetone, the coach from the 70s.
Right. His focus on heart rate zones.
Keeping athletes in that aerobic zone.
Yeah. Training smarter, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Maximizing fat burning, improving recovery, avoiding that anaerobic overload. It's all about oxygen use.
And breathing is obviously central to that.
Fundamental.
Okay, good news though. After that unpleasant nose plugging story.
Yes.
Remember Dr. Harvold's research on monkeys?
The rhesus monkeys, yes.
Forced mouth breathing changed their faces, their airways.
But
when they went back to nasal breathing, those changes reversed.
That's the really compelling part. It shows plasticity, adaptability.
So the author felt hopeful, maybe even long-term mouth breathing effects aren't permanent.
Harvold's work suggests that possibility. It offers hope that retraining breathing patterns can make a real structural difference.
Now here's a really weird connection. UC San Diego, 2015. A link between which nostril you breathe through more and hallucinations. In one specific case, a woman with schizophrenia.
Left nostril dominance linked to more hallucinations. That's fascinating.
And get this alternate nostril breathing, that yoga practice.
Nadi Shodhana.
It helped reduce her symptoms. It suggests we might actually be able to influence brain hemispheres just by how we breathe through each nostril.
Wow. That really shows the intricate links breathing, and brain function. The nostril cycle isn't random. It affects our physiology, maybe even cognition.
Can we game the system with breath work?
That's the tantalizing question, isn't it? Potential for mental well-being.
Okay, let's really get into the nose itself. It's not just two holes.
Far from it.
The surface area inside, if you unfolded it all.
About the size of a billiard ball.
Incredible. And each breath pulls in trillions of air molecules. Trillions.
And the nose has to process all of that. Those structures inside, the turbinates.
Or nasal concha, like little scrolls or shells.
They create turbulence, swirl the air, to maximize contact with the surface. For filtering, warming, humidifying.
The air conditioning system.
Exactly. That mucus layer traps dust, pathogens. It's the body's first line of defense. Like a sticky conveyor belt carrying junk away.
Ingenious design.
Sophisticated air filtration, protecting the lungs. The surface area from the turbinates is key to that efficiency.
And the nitric oxide thing you mentioned.
Right. Nasal breathing boosts nitric oxide levels, maybe up to 6 times more.
6-fold. And that leads to?
About 18% more oxygen absorption compared to mouth breathing.
18%. Just by breathing through your nose.
It's significant. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It widens blood vessels.
Improves blood flow, oxygen delivery.
Exactly. So it makes the whole process more efficient.
No wonder ancient cultures were so big on nasal breathing.
Like George Catlin's observation.
Of indigenous groups, right. Universally breathing through the nose.
And he linked it to great health, perfect teeth, strong facial structure. Wrote a whole book about it, The Breath of Life.
It's fascinating anthropological evidence. How breathing habits correlated with physical development before modern diets changed things.
And it's not just ancient history. Modern advocates,
Mm.
Dr. Mark Burhan, Ann Kearney,
The speech pathologist?
they recommend mouth taping to encourage nasal breathing, especially at night.
For things like ADHD, snoring, sounds a bit odd, taping your mouth.
It might seem unconventional, but it's a practical way to retrain the habit, especially when you're asleep and not consciously controlling it.
So it all comes down to that blunt, memorable motto.
Haha, yes.
Shut your mouth.
Concise. And pretty clear advice about the importance of nasal breathing for health.
Okay, we've focused a lot on the inhale, the nose. Let's talk exhale.
Equally critical.
Research links bigger lung capacity to longer life.
Yeah, studies like the one from University of Buffalo support that. Breathing capacity as a measure of living capacity.
That's a powerful idea. Your breath reflects your vitality.
And importantly, the ability to exhale fully is a big part of that capacity. It indicates physiological resilience.
And the good news is, lungs aren't fixed. We can change them.
Exactly. They're adaptable. Think of freedivers, like Herbert Nitsch.
Astonishing lung capacity.
It shows what's possible with training. Challenges the old idea that lung capacity just declines with age or is purely genetic.
And the Schroth method for scoliosis.
Right, using specific breathing exercises to help improve spinal curvature.
And the breathing problems that often go with it.
It shows how interconnected breathing is with our whole structure on musculoskeletal system.
But maybe the most surprising thing about exhaling comes from Carl Stoff.
And Lynn Martin, who continued his work.
Their insight was that a complete exhale is the real key, more so than just inhaling.
Yeah, it shifted the focus. A full, efficient exhale actually allows for a deeper, more effective inhale. It maximizes lung volume and gas exchange.
And our voice, produced on the exhale, its strength reflects our exhale strength.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
A weak voice might stem from a weak, incomplete exhalation.
And breathing doesn't just involve the lungs, right? Thoracic pump, the diaphragm.
Crucial players. Breathing creates pressure changes in the chest. The thoracic pump, which helps circulation.
And the diaphragm, that big muscle at the base of the ribs.
It acts like a pump itself. Pulls blood into the heart on the inhale, helps push it out on the exhale. It's all connected respiratory, circulatory.
And Stoff used these ideas to help people.
Yeah, people with emphysema, asthma, but also singers, athletes.
Even elite athletes.
He found even top athletes often had respiratory weakness, meaning they weren't breathing as efficiently as they could be.
Makes you wonder how many of us aren't, even if we feel okay.
His findings suggest optimal breathing often needs conscious training. It's not always intuitive, even for the fit.
But his work was largely forgotten.
Sadly, yes. After he left the VA system. A kind of lost art we're only now rediscovering.
Okay, shift gears again. Carbon dioxide, CO2.
Ah, the misunderstood molecule.
You usually think of it just as waste, right? Something to breathe out.
That's the common view. But the author's talks with Anders Olsson challenged that.
Olson's point was,
That CO2 is actually crucial. It plays a vital role in getting oxygen to our tissues and in maintaining overall balance.
Olson also felt modern medicine focuses too much on fixing breathing problems.
And not enough on the fundamentals, on prevention, how to breathe well in the first place.
Yeah, like we've missed the basics.
It highlights that potential imbalance. Strong focus on disease treatment, maybe less on promoting fundamental health, like proper breathing mechanics.
Okay, quick biology recap. Air goes down, into lungs, tiny sacs called alveoli.
Well, the gas exchange happens. Oxygen in, CO2 out.
But it's not just a simple swap.
No, that's where CO2 surprise role comes in. It's actually needed to help release oxygen from red blood cells into the tissues.
So without enough CO2, oxygen stays locked onto the blood cells.
Essentially, yes. Research by Yandel Henderson showed oxygen alone isn't a stimulant. CO2 is key for that release.
Which means breathing pure oxygen, like at those oxygen bars.
Might not actually help much. You could even end up with less oxygen getting to your cells because you've blown off too much CO2. Relative suffocation.
Mind blown. So counterintuitively, breathing less could be better.
That's the idea behind certain practices. Ancient yogis, Tibetan Buddhists.
Even samurai with the feather test.
Yeah. If the feather under the nose moved too much, they weren't calm enough, maybe not breathing efficiently enough.
It suggests slower, controlled breathing is linked to a calmer state, better energy use.
And modern techniques reflect this too. Buteyko method. Half-full breathing during exercise.
Intentionally breathing less air.
Right. Training the body to be efficient with slightly higher CO2 levels.
And the benefits are?
Better endurance, better lactate tolerance, maybe more red blood cells, even fat loss. Kind of like altitude training.
But it's hard to do.
It can be challenging, yes. Goes against the instinct to gasp for more air.
Okay, let's look at how modern life itself might be messing with our breathing.
The industrialized diet.
Since the Industrial Revolution, soft, processed foods.
Lacking fiber, nutrients, requiring less chewing.
And this has led to physical changes, shrinking mouths, stunted facial bones.
Increased dental issues, and yes, breathing problems. Even affected height in some periods.
It's the chewing thing again. Weston Price's research in the 30s.
Comparing traditional diets, tough whole foods, with modern ones.
And he found?
Clear link. Traditional diets meant great teeth, strong facial structure. He concluded that chewing, the physical stress of it,
which we barely do now,
is crucial for developing the mouth, teeth, throat, face properly.
Wow. So our soft diet literally reshapes our faces, potentially impacting our airways.
Price's work strongly suggests that. It's not just nutrition, it's the mechanics of eating.
We also heard about empty nose syndrome.
Yeah, a really unfortunate potential outcome of some sinus surgeries. Shows how delicate that nasal balance is. And obstructions often happen lower down too, right, in the mouth and throat.
Linked to sleep apnea, snoring, asthma, even ADHD.
And dentists are often the first to spot these issues, using things like the Friedman tongue scale.
Checking how much of the uvula you can see.
Yeah, it gives an indication of potential airway obstruction risk back there.
And orthodontics comes into this too, Dr. John Mew's observations.
About tooth extractions and pulling teeth back.
Potentially hindering facial growth, leading to smaller airways.
That was his concern. He called it a sadly common sequel to some treatments, challenging the focus purely on aesthetics.
Which leads to mewing. His son, Mike Mew, popularized it.
That tongue posture exercise, aiming to widen the upper palate, improve breathing.
Is there science behind it?
Still developing.
Oh.
Lots of anecdotal reports of benefits, but rigorous studies are catching up that certainly suggest tongue posture matters.
And Dr. Theodore Belfour, another dentist,
also saw the impact of modern diets. He developed a retainer.
To remodel the mouth, improve airways, and the author tried it.
Yes, and reported significant bone growth, wider airway. A powerful personal account of how these structures can potentially be changed.
Okay, let's connect breathing to the nervous system now. This is huge.
The autonomic nervous system. 2 branches.
Sympathetic. Fight or flight.
Parasympathetic.
Rest and digest.
And breathing is the control lever. Pretty much. Short, shallow breaths tend to hit the gas, activate the sympathetic system.
Puts you on alert.
While slow, deep breaths tend to hit the brake, engage the parasympathetic.
And we can consciously control this.
Absolutely. That's the power of it. Breath is a direct line to influencing your stress state.
We hear about extreme examples like Tummo breathing.
The Tibetan inner fire. Generating body heat, enduring cold through breath and focus.
Alexander David Neal wrote about seeing it. Sounds incredible.
It really demonstrates the potential for conscious control over supposedly involuntary functions. mind over matter via breath.
And the vagus nerve is key here, Dr. Porges' work.
He highlights the vagus nerve as the main pathway connecting breath and the autonomic system. It affects organ function, stress response.
And chronic stress can lead to poor vagal tone.
Kind of an understimulation, yeah, linked to various health issues. Breathing well helps stimulate the vagus nerve properly.
Then there's Wim Hof. Everyone's heard of him.
The Iceman.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme cold heat endurance combined with specific breathing.
And science is looking into it. Effects on immune system, nervous system.
Yes, his methods are generating a lot of research interest. A modern example of breathwork's potential impact.
And on the more intense end, holotropic breathwork.
Developed by Stanislav and Christina Grof, uses intense hyperventilation.
To induce altered states for therapy.
That's the aim. Exploring consciousness, potentially releasing trauma.
But hyperventilating itself, breathing too much, too fast.
It lowers CO2 levels significantly.
Which can constrict blood vessels in the brain, reduce blood flow.
Yes, and in some cases, potentially lead to altered perceptions, even hallucinations. Again, it shows more isn't always better. Balance is key.
Okay, and the amygdala comes back in here, the fear center.
Right. Crucial for survival. And this links to CO2 therapy again.
Treating anxiety, panic with CO2 inhalation.
Early research by Wolpe, Klein showed promise.
But then SSRIs took over?
Largely, yeah.
Yeah.
The CO2 research got sidelined, but Dr. Justin Feinstein is reviving it now with promising results.
How does it work?
The idea is it might directly influence the body's suffocation alarm system, maybe helping to recalibrate it, reduce panic sensitivity.
The author tried it. High concentration CO2.
Briefly, yes, and described an intense feeling of suffocation even though oxygen levels were fine.
Wow. Really shows CO2's power over that breathlessness feeling. It's not just about oxygen.
A very direct demonstration of the complex link between physiology and subjective experience.
Okay, moving towards the wrap-up. There's also talk of more subtle aspects, subtle energies.
Yeah, things that are harder to measure conventionally, like Swami Rama's abilities.
Consciously controlling heart rate, body temperature. Documented, but hard to explain scientifically.
It points towards a potential level of control over our physiology that maybe science doesn't fully grasp yet. Influence of mind, internal practices.
And Albert Szent-Györgyi, the Nobel laureate.
His idea that life operates on a deeper subatomic energy level. Prana, essentially.
And breathing is fundamental to that energy exchange.
That was his belief, connecting the physical act of breathing to something more fundamental, more energetic.
And the yogic traditions emphasize patience with this stuff, right? Pranayama.
Exactly. Gradual practice.
Yeah.
Not forcing it. Cultivating that connection over time.
So after all this, evolution, mechanics, CO2, nerves, energy, what's the core message? What's better breathing?
It seems, despite all the variety, it boils down to some fundamentals.
Like?
Slowing down, breathing deeper, using the diaphragm, full inhales, and crucially, full exhale.
Focusing on that smooth flow.
Right.
Yeah.
These principles keep coming up, whether it's Buteyko stuff, ancient yoga. They converge on similar ideas.
It's like they all rediscovered the same core truth about mechanics.
That convergence is pretty strong evidence for these fundamental principles.
And the overall conclusion is, breathing is as important as diet and exercise. A missing pillar.
Absolutely. It underpins everything. Recognizing its importance is key.
And there's some consensus now on what breathing better means in practice.
Growing consensus, yes. Prioritize nasal breathing. Breathe low and slow, diaphragmatically. Be mindful of your breath.
And we learned about that communication link. Chemoreceptors sensing CO2, talking to the amygdala, the fear center.
A vital connection. Disruptions there might even contribute to anxiety. It's all interconnected.
Which means regulating our breath can influence our emotional state directly.
Through these very real physiological pathways, yes.
So the big takeaway seems simple, but profound.
Balanced, efficient breathing is essential for health, happiness, maybe longevity.
This automatic thing we do holds incredible power.
It's a tool we always have access to. Learning to use it consciously can impact our whole quality of life.
And consistency matters, right? Like the author's practice of Sudarshan Kriya.
Yes, regular practice helps integrate these healthier patterns, leading to sustained benefits. It's not a one-off fix.
Well, this has been quite the journey. From the dawn of life
to ancient wisdom, modern science. It's remarkable how central breath is.
So for everyone listening, the main point is,
remember the power in your breath. This unconscious act can be consciously harnessed.
Pay attention to it. And maybe.
Yes. Remember the motto, shut your mouth. Prioritize nasal breathing.
So as you take your next breath, maybe just pause. Consider that journey of air, the potential within it.
Harnessing that power for your own well-being.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
It's been fascinating.